Over the years, West Virginia has had some memorable quarterbacks such as Pat White and most recently Will Grier, but neither of these guys have had the NFL hype or college potential that Geno Smith had. Geno Smith took over college football and is regarded as one of the better college football quarterbacks of the 2010s decade. But after his West Virginia career, things did not exactly work out for him, and some say he didn't live up to expectations during his college career as his Heisman season fell apart pretty quickly. Today, we're going to go back in time and take a look at the rise of Geno Smith, his time at West Virginia, and what ultimately happened to his once promising football career. But first, be sure to give the video a like if you want to support college football on YouTube, subscribe if you love college football as well, suggest what player I should take a look at next, and be sure to stay until the end. Now let's get started and talk about what happened to Geno Smith. Let's first go back in time and talk about how Geno Smith became a big-time player to begin with, and for that, we need to go south, and we need to revisit college football history as well. Before Geno became a star, his family had great athletic history, as his great-uncle was an All-American hurdler at Florida State, and his cousin Melvin Bratton was a star running back for the Miami Hurricanes back in the 1980s. The nickname Geno came from his grandfather, who was nicknamed Big Geno, and now that we have the family history out of the way, let's talk about Geno's football career. He grew up a big-time athlete, and when he eventually got to Miramar High School, he had a coach that would connect him to the future a bit. The head coach of his high school was named Damon Cogdell, and he played college football for West Virginia back in the day. Everyone saw serious potential in Geno Smith, and by the time he was an upperclassman, he had become a star. As a junior, he passed for 2,200 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions, and was named a second-team All-Florida State quarterback. As a senior, he was one of the top recruits on the recruiting market and was even invited to the prestigious Elite 11 quarterback camp, and as a senior, he threw for 3,089 yards and 30 scores, while also rushing for over 300 yards on the ground. When it came time to recruiting, he was a 4-star recruit and a top 100 player in the nation, as he held offers from schools such as Alabama, Florida State, Boston College, LSU, and West Virginia. But his teammate was also a big-time recruit, and he had just chosen to commit to West Virginia, and some wondered if that would help sway him. He ended up committing to the Mountaineers and had this to say: "It really felt in my heart that this was the place I needed to be. The coaches, for one, are very classy guys, and all of the coaches, I could see they were very passionate about the program. The main thing is the coaching staff. Those are the guys that are going to be my home away from home." It was apparently only a soft commitment at the time though, as he would still visit USF and LSU in the following months. He would eventually settle in with his commitment, and he was one of the top prospects in the country. According to 24/7 Sports, Geno Smith was a 4-star recruit, number 3 dual-threat quarterback, and the 100th best player in the class of 2009. With a lot of talented players coming through West Virginia over the years, Geno Smith was just the next guy in line. The Mountaineers were a good program and had previous star quarterbacks like Pat White, and previous star quarterback was still freshly in the minds of Mountaineers fans. Jarrett Brown was a senior and the starting quarterback at the time though, but Geno's time would come soon. In his freshman year at West Virginia, Smith completed 32 of 49 passes for 309 yards, while also throwing 1 touchdown and 1 interception. He had shown flash as a freshman, and in 2010, he would get a chance to show the world what he was made of, as he would be the starter. He had his first big moment as he led the Mountaineers to a comeback win over their rival Marshall, and then he tossed 4 touchdowns and a win over Maryland. Tavon Austin was a star at the time for West Virginia as well, and they had a pretty talented team, but they had some weird losses. They lost to LSU, which wasn't weird, but did lose to Syracuse and UConn. They ended up going 9-3 and got to play in a bowl game where they would play NC State in the Champs Sports Bowl, and they would lose. On the year, Geno threw for 2,763 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 7 picks, while being a second-team All-Big East selection. Going into West Virginia's last year in the Big East, they had high expectations with Geno leading the way. They started out 5-1, but lost to the only decent team on their schedule in number 2 LSU. They lost to Syracuse and Louisville and didn't beat anyone relevant until they finally knocked off number 23 Cincinnati and both Pitt and South Florida to end the season. He was solid, but he would put the college football world on notice and would show why he could win the Heisman in 2012 in their bowl game. Against number 15 Clemson in the Orange Bowl, Smith threw for over 400 yards and 6 touchdowns as they beat the Tigers in one of the most embarrassing bowl losses of all time, especially for Clemson. An article by Bleacher Report said that Geno Smith was the frontrunner for the Heisman Trophy and said, quote, "He's a game changer. He's exciting to watch, plays on a BCS conference team, and he's stayed out of trouble." Going into 2012, he threw 9 touchdowns in his first 2 combined games, and then he'd go on to have an early season moment that would propel him to the top of the college football world. In a game against number 25 Baylor, Geno Smith threw 8 touchdowns as they put up 70 points in a 70-63 win over the Bears. After 4 more touchdowns and a road win over number 11 Texas, the Heisman Trophy was Geno's to lose at this point, and some had said he already won it. Except, this is where everything fell apart. He threw a combined 2 touchdowns and 2 picks in their next 2 games, and the defense gave up almost 700 yards to Texas Tech as they lost to the Red Raiders and then dropped the game to number 4 Kansas State, who at the time was led by Colin Klein, and that was when Colin Klein's Heisman campaign would begin as well. They lost in double overtime to TCU and then lost to Oklahoma State before all of a sudden the Mountaineers went off the rails and they were almost forgotten completely. He did have a chance to at least somewhat save his reputation against number 12 Oklahoma, but his 4 touchdowns were not enough to lead them to victory against the Sooners. He would win his final 2 games against bottom dwellers Iowa State and Kansas to help West Virginia finish with a 7-5 record, but to say it was disappointing was an understatement. He left college losing to Syracuse for the 3rd straight time, and this was in a bowl game, and that was a sad end, and I'm not sure why he could never beat them. He passed for 4,205 yards, 42 touchdowns, and 6 picks, which was a pretty solid stat line, but he didn't win anything big. The defense let the Mountaineers down big time, and there are many factors that caused this complete collapse, but many think that because the defense was so bad, the offense did not think it could compete, and it just led to a total team collapse, and then once the confidence was gone, that was it. Despite the poor finish, Geno was regarded as one of the top quarterback prospects in the 2013 draft, but people were skeptical, and that class ended up being terrible, as E.J. Manuel was the best guy. Todd McShay still said he was the best all-around quarterback in the draft, but Geno fell to the 2nd round after he apparently didn't handle the draft process in a very professional manner. He was drafted with the 39th overall pick by the New York Jets, and was seen as the potential franchise guy moving forwards. Geno had a pretty solid rookie year in terms of passing yards, as he did break the New York Jets rookie record for passing yards in a season with 3,046, but he threw for 21 interceptions and only 12 touchdowns. In 2014, he started again and passed for 2,525 yards, but threw 13 picks compared to 13 scores, and at this point, it seemed like the faith was starting to be lost. He would be the Week 1 starter in 2015, but he'd get into an altercation in which his jaw was broken, and he'd only play in 1 game in 2015. In 2016, he was the backup to Ryan Fitzpatrick, and once again he played very sparingly, and had also even torn his ACL by the end of the year. Since then, he has played for the Giants, the Chargers, and the Seahawks, and he is currently a backup for Seattle. So what happened to Geno Smith, and what went wrong for him? Well, it's a pretty complicated answer, but I'm going to make it pretty simple. He was a guy who was always athletic and had the potential to do big things, but he just seemed he could never put it all together. The Jets may not have had the best coaches, the best receivers, or the best organization, but he never threw more touchdowns than interceptions in a year, and that was a huge red flag and a major disappointment. He got 2 years to prove his worth, but he could never display the it factor or prove that he could be a franchise guy. What we saw in college was that he was a great player, but once again, he never won the biggest games, and when his team needed him to elevate his play and help them get back on track in 2012, they didn't get a whole lot out of him, and they ended up having a bad season. And that also was the same in the NFL, as he could just not make up for his teammates' mistakes. The injuries and the off-the-field issues were weird as well, but overall, I just don't think he was ever supposed to be a franchise guy, and his role was always that of a backup. I was way too young to really watch him at West Virginia, but after researching his story and watching some highlights, it makes me think he was a lot of fun to watch, and I wish I got to see him more. But I want to know your thoughts. What do you think of Geno Smith while he was in college, and why do you think he ultimately didn't make it as a big-time quarterback in the NFL? Also, let me know who I should do next, and if you want to support what I do here on YouTube, be sure to give the video a like, subscribe if you love college football, and check out all my other videos, including my What Happened To videos and my What Happened To Will Grier video. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.